Welcome everyone to this session on sustaining the future through volunteer leadership. Today we're going to hear from several panelists. We've got some great panelists with some great background in their volunteer programs and also in their own work lives and professional lives. When you listen to what each of the panelists and speakers have to say today, think of it through your lens. How could you get involved? How could that specifically interest you, if not already? So think of it through your lens and that what you hear today. Okay, so just a quick overview of today and what we're going to do. We'll hear from Carol Reig, Bentley Systems Corporate Foundation Officer, and she's going to talk to you about workforce development and industry involvement in workforce development and what that really is, so kind of a trending, if you will. And then I'll join back on and talk to you a little bit about what BeMentors is and it'll be my pleasure at that point to introduce to you the panel, the great panel that we have assembled today. And we'll hear from each panelist about the program they're involved with, why they got involved, and a little bit more about it. So again, listen to those programs and see if it's something through your lens that you would be interested with and volunteering with. And then we'll kind of culminate all of that with questions. We've got some pre-populated questions that some of you have sent in. We'll go through those questions with each of the panelists and hear from them why they got involved and what their opinions are on these questions, what their take is. And of course, we'll be taking audience questions throughout the session. So as those questions come up and as you think about those questions, go ahead and enter them and write them into the chat window in the bottom left of your screen. And we'll address those as time permits. Okay, so again, the overview here, we've got myself with Bentley Systems, Carol Reig, Corporate Foundation Officer with Bentley Systems, Jared Barnhart, he's again a professional engineer from DMW. We've got Josh Romalis, an Executive Director, and Katie Aguilar, professional engineer with Bentley Systems. So we've got a good collection of professionals here, and we get to hear some great stories. Before we get going, let's kind of remember why we're here. Okay, every day we're professionals. We deal with real world problems, right? And we're kind of thinking of them in there's a top, a bottom, a square, a side. It's pretty uniform. Our solutions are uniform. Let's face it, they pretty much are. But when we are focused on trying to encourage the youth, tomorrow's future, to get involved and join a STEM and follow into a STEM career, they are bringing creativity. The world has not given them sides and tops and bottoms. So let's take a moment here and look at Peter. What Peter did here, he was asked to expand this equation. Okay, simple thing, expand the equation. And if you look very close, you can look and see that Peter really did expand the equation. He looked at it from his limitless perspective. And maybe he got a couple extra bonus points that we don't know, but you know, Peter expanded that equation in his mind. So let's do a little brain test for us, okay? For those of you who have already picked up the Illuminate session here, I'm going to ask you to do just a little bit of homework. See this on the right-hand side, find x squared plus 5x minus 6. Can one of you take a pen and solve that for me? It says find x. Can one of you do that? Just grab the pen if you have it. It'll be right below the smiley face or the pointer. And can you find x? I'll just give you a few seconds to do this. Trying to show you that there's a different way to look at things always. Somebody, there you go. Somebody found x. Will you look at that? Didn't solve for it, but they found it. Whoever that was, so thank you. You know, we'll give you a round of applause online, right? So thank you for doing that. And so you found it. You looked at it in a different way. So as we're going through this, keep in mind that the end goal is to encourage tomorrow's future to look at our real-world problems with that creative slice to it, creative slant. All right. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you our panel today. I'll just go through the list of our panels here. Jared Barnhart, he's a project manager. He is the president of the Engineers Without Borders Chesapeake Professional Chapter. He's been involved with the EWB for several years, and he's bringing an Army background, company commander, platoon leader, and sergeant. So he's got some stories. He's got some really good experiences to bring. And just to make sure everybody can see my screen, are the slides advancing? Just want to make sure everybody's still there and they're advancing.
No, I still see the creative solutions for real-world problems.
Okay, all right. I just fixed that. All right. So, sorry, Jared. There's a picture of Jared. Everybody should be able to follow along now. Okay, so he was project manager and volunteer with Engineers Without Borders and involved with the U.S. Army. Okay, so Katie, are you able to see it now? Okay, all right, we're good. Okay, and next on the panel is Josh Romalis. He's the executive director with Lyft Philadelphia. All right, and if you are not able to see it, just click follow, and you can follow along in the checkbox moderators. Okay, so Josh Romalis, he's the executive director for Lyft Philadelphia. He is involved with the program and strategy lead for Lyft there at the operations there in Philly. He's bringing former Peace Corps volunteer experience. So, okay. Next we have Katie. Katie is she's a professional engineer, geotechnical project engineer at Bentley Systems. She's a volunteer for TransportationYOU, and we're going to hear more about TransportationYOU. She's also a volunteer for Habitat for Humanity, and she's heavily involved in training. She is endurance training for cancer research funding, and she's really big into triathlons, and her motto is basically ready, set, go. So good stories we get to hear from Katie. And then we have Carol Reig. We'll be hearing from her in just a moment. She is the Corporate Foundation Officer for Bentley Systems, involved in corporate giving centers around the globe. She leads the response to catastrophic disasters through the corporation. That would be like earthquakes and hurricanes and things like that. And she's one of the creators and national director for Future City Competition 92 to 08. Her motto is lifetime active volunteer, and she's been doing it since she was very young. So with that said, Carol, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Martin, and I hope everyone can hear me. And what a pleasure it is to be part of this panel discussion today. And as I see a few people from my Future City days, you can certainly see that I lost my screen here, Martin, my slides. There we go. You can certainly see that you know, a lot of this work all works together. That our, as we'll see here, our next gen workforce development is really our silver bullet for the future, not only of the United States, but certainly the world here. And so for those that have been, you know, in the workforce for a short time or a long time, that at this point industry involvement is critical to the development of our current workforce and our future workforce. So why now, and what's in it for the students? And I'll just be able to provide with you just a few of the Bentley STEM grants, which is our science, technology, engineering, and math grants that are given by the corporation, given by Bentley Systems, but they are directed by the colleagues, by our employees. So this is something where the colleagues would like to see the Bentley funds being used in STEM grants through our STEM grant program globally. And then also, what kind of results are we actually achieving through these efforts? So trends in other industries, and basically this slide will show you that just even a short trend from 2008 to 2011, that employees want to get involved with volunteer activities. I think even more so today. There is this trend not only for we want to get involved, but we must get involved. Over the last 30 years, I've been working as a professional. So you can see here the volunteerism rate is increasing, and that for those industries that actually log the hours of their workplace volunteers, you can see that there's definitely a lot of we call it skilled volunteerism, and we'll hear a little bit more about that through our Engineers Without Borders discussion, that we're taking our professional skills now into the field and making a difference that way too. So just moving on to the next slide here. In 2011, the Bentley STEM Grant Outreach Program was reached more than 1,000 global Bentley colleagues participated, and Bentley Systems is an engineering infrastructure software firm, and we're located in at least 45 countries around the world, where we have employees that work in different countries, and then people who use our software is certainly more countries involved. But as you can see here in the United Kingdom, our colleagues there that are based out of the United Kingdom decided to help fund a water well project, a water pump project for a sister school in Sierra Leone, so that the students in the United Kingdom can understand very quickly the impact of water and its access, and also the impact on the school, the ability for the children to go to school. Many times it's the girls that end up going to get the water from the river. And we need to put that back there. Oh, it kind of just moved on its own there. In Romania, we had our colleagues there based out of those offices supporting a computer contest called F11, which is a national contest regarding computer coding. In Turkey and Pakistan, we had rural school assistants where computers and classroom projectors were provided through the STEM grant program. In Australia, we provide financial support and mentor support for Engineers Without Borders Australia, where many of their projects reach into Southeast Asia, such as Australia, as well as Cambodia and Vietnam and India. In the United States, we have about 1,200 employees just based here in the United States out of 3,000 employees. And many of our programs, and I'll focus are all around and including Future City, that I'll focus a little bit on about the Solar Nights in a minute or two. In Canada, school curricula, Honduras, rural school assistance is that in Honduras 70% of the population is at the poverty level, so they don't even have a building for the school, so we help with the building of schools there. And in India, we'll talk a little bit about Techie Day and Science Center support for on-site STEM learning. And that was 2011. We have more countries to add for 2012. So, you know, our focus is that we need to get our young people interested in science and technology engineering when they're still in their formative years, whether it's in high school or even middle school and now grade school. But these programs are only going to work if they actually see this path of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, into their future. So here we have an example of a solar car that was built by the students there of South Plantation High School right outside of Miami. And the solar car, it's kind of interesting, they had more girls than boys on the actual team for this year, for 2012. And you see here, this is the car that won in 2011 the top place prize there. So these students they had to raise their own money, build their car, and race it at the Texas Motor Speedway. And they're quite passionate about it. And just to share another example of what we're doing with our, and that the solar car was actually sponsored by, in part by Bentley colleagues. We have Techie Days in Exton, where our main office is, where we bring about 50 students in to learn not only about how the software works in one of our classrooms, but we take them on tour, if you look below here, to see some of the operations. And what was interesting, those same Techie Days were actually replicated by our colleagues in Chennai and Mumbai, where the colleagues went to, in Chennai, it was actually an orphanage, and the students did their own version of Techie Day, or of Future City, with, you can see them creating their infrastructure there. And in Mumbai, they actually all rode to go see the Science Center. And things that we may take for granted here in the United States are far and above beyond the normal in some of our countries around the world where Bentley has offices. And then this past spring, we actually donated the Bentley software to Engineers Without Borders USA, the 12,000 chapter members. And so literally with the click of a button, they can go to their Engineers Without Borders USA website and download 24 products of the Bentley products that are used commercially now to help with their projects with what they're doing with Engineers Without Borders. And so this donation was just made in March of 2012. So I just want to finish up and just perhaps give you just a short case study of how skilled volunteerism and what we're doing here at Bentley has also helped with promoting the next-gen workforce development here. So we actually did donate our software even prior to this large March donation in the fall of 2011 to the 2012 to the Northeastern University students, where they're working on a project in Honduras to bring basically water from the river up to their village where they're living at. And the Water Gem software, it's a Bentley product, was used for this Honduras project. So not only do the students actually build the water system, which we'll hear about more, that they need to design the water system. And why doing it on a software type program? Does that help? Well, it helps for future use, for sustainability, to see where the plans have been put in and to build upon that there too. So one of the mentors there, Mike Sanders, had actually been a student and now works at Kleinfelter and is a Bentley user there. And so we can see that we have skilled volunteerism in action where students use the Bentley software. They were able to help in one of their projects with Engineers Without Borders in a very passionate but practical way, and then bring that skill set into the workplace for future use there. But more importantly, they're bringing their passion to the workplace and their willingness to go forward. So we see that we're developing a generation of engineers for the 21st century, and the leaders are, these are our leaders. Our students are here right now, and whether they're in college or they're in grade school or middle school, these are our leaders who will be the facilitators of sustainable development, social and economic change, capacity building, and appropriate technology. And that our engineers are going to be part of our social entrepreneurism, community builders, and peacemakers, and more so now than ever in the world that we live in today. And I'm going to push it back. I'm going to flip it back over now to Martin. Thank you very much, Martin, for this opportunity.
Alrighty. Thank you, Carol. Thank you. I'd like to just take a moment and kind of set the background here and why we're putting this together and why I'm involved. Created the BeMentors community and have been heavily involved in STEM outreach and mentoring kind of all throughout college and high school and professional career. Really involved and active in VP in education, VP of education for the Texas Society of American Civil Engineers. So I really like education. It's really, really fun stuff, and especially the mentoring. So I'm kind of driven to it. And whenever I'm at a conference or whenever you're here, run into me on the street and I'm introducing something about BeMentors to you, I'm going to ask you this question. I'm going to ask you, why do you get involved? Why do you Jared Barnhart, why do you get involved? And what's in it for you? Dan Koval, why do you get involved? Charles Griffith, why do you get involved? These are guys that I've actually asked the question, right? Okay, my hook, the reason that I do is so that I can watch others grow and then turn and then step back and let them lead. In this case, I'm a little biased. It's my son. He's teaching a class about compressive strength on concrete cylinders and how that works in the lab. I admit that he can't tie his shoes, but he's in front of a class teaching, and I'm able to stand back and just watch that. So that's why I do it. So why do you do it, and why do you do it and get involved? Just very quickly, what BeMentors is itself, it's a community, cloud mentoring community for other professionals to get involved and get connected in many different ways to a lot of other programs that you may not have even heard about. You can network with other mentors, connect through webcasts, much as is going on today. We have various ones like this throughout the year, knowledge sharing on the various social networking communities, and what it's all about is we're bringing this technical skills, the professionalism, to the students so we can bring them soft skills, real-world challenges, and make it real. All right. So with that said, what you're really here today is here to talk about the panelists, right? You're here to hear what the panelists have to say, here to ask them questions. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to turn it over to Josh Romalis, the Executive Director for Lift Philadelphia. Josh?
Thanks so much, Martin, and it's really quite an honor to be part of the panel and to be talking with everybody all across the country and perhaps the world today. And what I would like to talk about is my own personal experience, and then my experience leading the organization that I work with now, which is Lift Philadelphia. So just to start off, I posed the question: what is wrong with this picture? And I'll give everybody 10 seconds to look at it and what's wrong with it. All right, maybe 5 seconds. So when I looked at this picture originally, I saw it in real time. Actually, I saw it happening. I saw 4 men, riding on top of a car. So that's, to me, relatively not normal, or at least it was relatively abnormal to see people. And this car was going at around 50 miles an hour up a long, winding road. And the picture was taken when I was living in West Africa as a Peace Corps volunteer some years ago. So now when I look at this picture and I ask myself, what's wrong with this picture? I actually say to myself, nothing. There's nothing wrong with this picture, because it looks completely normal to me based on the experience that I had as a Peace Corps volunteer when I was part of the Peace Corps. And I think what's really important in looking at this picture is that an intensive volunteer experience, and with mine it was when I was as part of the Peace Corps, living with a population, really understanding their needs, developing relationships, really led to, for me, what was a real shift. And for me, the power of volunteerism is threefold. From my perspective, being in the Peace Corps and being a volunteer, and granted this was a very intensive experience, but it really led to a shift in perspective. It also led to an idea that I could really have a significant and real impact. And it also led to, for me specifically, a real transformation in the way that I saw my place in the world. And my place in the world, I had considered myself kind of less as somebody who now needed to just be charitable, but more a part of an integrated world where I could really use volunteerism to not only give to others, but also to gain from others and really learn the power of community and the power of an integrated community. And I think that these are things that, as a volunteer, it's easier to learn sometimes than perhaps during one's workday. With volunteerism, you, in many cases, can open yourself up to this shift in perspective that leads to transformation in a way that can be much more meaningful than some of the other things that we might be doing during the day. We all have busy lives and busy things to do, but when we engage as volunteers and when we give back in ways that make sense for us, we really leave ourselves open for this transformation. So I found myself really lucky enough to become involved with the organization that I now work for, which is Lift. And what I do is I run the operations for Lift Philadelphia. Now, Lift is a national program that really is based on the power of volunteerism to change the face of poverty in this country. And our mission, as is stated on the slide, is to combat poverty and expand opportunity for all Philadelphians. And in the Lift network, which is in Chicago, D.C., New York, Philly, Boston, and Los Angeles, it's really to combat poverty and expand opportunity for everyone in this country. And the way that we do that is pretty straightforward. We recruit and train volunteers to work one-on-one with community members in need. So they're in need of a range of supports. So there's employment, housing, benefits, help with tax returns, help with financial aid, referrals to other agencies for things like legal aid, child care, health care, and what the work is that our volunteers do. So if I left my office right now and I went into our client service room, I would see volunteers who are primarily college students, by the way, but we're actually open to a range of community members, sitting at a computer, at a desk, working with one of our clients who is a community member, and they're doing job applications, they're doing housing applications, they're creating a resume, they're preparing for an interview for an upcoming job interview. Perhaps they're working on a benefits applications to get connected with something like energy assistance so they can help make ends meet. There's just a full range of activities that a volunteer and a client might be doing together. But the key is, for a volunteer, this experience becomes incredibly meaningful because they get to see what the community really looks and feels like outside of the bubble of their world, usually the university world, but perhaps it's a world of a little bit more comfort, although we have volunteers from throughout the socioeconomic spectrum. But our volunteers are able to really interact with community members in an intensive way and give back of their knowledge, but also learn so much from the community members who, in many cases, have gone through all sorts of trials and tribulations and have made it through relatively well and are really trying to make ends meet as best they can. We help them, but at the same time, they provide a perspective shift for us that helps us understand what the challenges are really in the communities that we serve. And the fact that we're working on these really important issues for our volunteers becomes very meaningful because it becomes about relationship building and trust between our volunteers and our clients. And the fact that we also ask our volunteers to make a real commitment to this work. We're not asking them to come in for an hour. We're asking them to do 3 to 10 hours per week. Some volunteers actually do even more than that. And they come in and they work in our offices for a really good chunk of time during their week and really give a lot of themselves. They also go through training, and it's a pretty intensive training at that. They're shadowed by veteran volunteers, they're given feedback, they're given opportunities for reflection. All of that is to create an experience for the volunteer that makes it very meaningful, both for them and of course for the community member that they're working with. And what I've seen has been just incredibly meaningful and magical in a way is the transformation of some of our volunteers, of many of them actually. So there are volunteers who come out to our offices, which are located in different neighborhoods in Philadelphia, very underserved neighborhoods, and some of our volunteers are scared to come out to our offices. But a month in, 2 months, 3 months into their service with Lyft, they become incredibly comfortable, not just in making the trip out, but in being and existing with the community here. And I think that transformation is something that, for me, is the most powerful. And when I think about the influence and impact that our volunteers are having, but also the impact on their lives, I'm continually inspired by the organization and the work that we're able to do. And we're trying to grow to scale, so we're working with 190 volunteers, and we served about 3,200 clients over the past year. So this is a significant number of folks that we're working with and that we're serving. And I think I missed that last slide, but so just to wrap up, I think that there are opportunities that abound to get involved, and the best volunteer experience from my perspective is one that, like Lyft, really enables you to have a shift in perspective, show that you can make a real impact, and then could lead to transformation in your life and in the lives of many other people that you're working with. So I'll stop there, and I look forward to continuing on with some of the questions later.
All righty. Thank you, Josh. And we'll turn it over to Jared to hear a little bit more about Engineers Without Borders. Jared?
Hi. Can you hear me there?
Yes, indeed.
I'm good. I wanted to first thank Martin again for inviting me to be in this discussion. And I think after listening to Josh's talk, I'll kind of form some of my stuff around perspective as well, as that's what's developed me into the point in which I am. Briefly, I am a project manager at a site civil engineering firm, and I have volunteered in numerous capacities, most recently as president of the Engineers Without Borders Chesapeake Professional Chapter. And with full intensive disclosure, I have to say that we're kind of in a transition point now as a chapter, but that's not to mean that I'm not going to stop volunteering somewhere or somehow in mentoring. So this photo on the bottom right is an example of how we've helped the local universities as professionals prepare their Engineers Without Borders chapters for international travel, and we did some hands-on surveying training for all the students, so that when they went abroad to go to communities and do their assessments, they would be able to accurately take measurements and come back with meaningful information. It's kind of a long story how I became involved with Engineers Without Borders. I went into the Army almost right out of high school. I was one of those kids who probably didn't work hard enough and spent too much time on sports, so I didn't get the scholarships I needed to go to school, so I went in the Army. Was very nearly, after training, sent to Saudi Arabia, and being a young kid from Kansas, that was a big eye-opener. A complete shift in both landscape and different types of religion and different types of eating and living, and so that really started to open my eyes to things. As I was in the Army did a very good job of teaching its members to be mentors, to be leaders at a very young, very active age. And in the Army, as in all organizations, you're only as good as all of your subordinates. So there was a lot of time spent bringing people along in that regard. I was lucky enough to get a scholarship to go to school. I went to Kansas State and immediately got involved in American Society of Civil Engineers. I was involved with the concrete canoe competition there, became the team captain there, and mentored young students along in that process. I also was active in the ASCE chapter and was a student chapter president. And I take a lot of that from, I think, really where the Army pushed me to be leading and mentoring others. I was afforded an opportunity to study abroad while I was in school, and I went to Australia, where I spent a semester plus there. And additionally, going back to the perspective, Australia is very similar to the United States in so many ways, but at the same time it's so different, and just seeing how different people look at a different situation, whether it be from societal issues, from development issues, from friendships, and seeing different things, that really opened my mind. After school, I took a brief break before going to work, and I lived in Sweden, where they're a very socialist country, and seeing the way they operated really just kind of put an additional perspective on everything there. And so when I came to work here in Baltimore, that's when I became involved, not too long after, with Engineers Without Borders, as I felt that I could put a lot of my previous experiences to good work there. So Engineers Without Borders mission is essentially to partner with disadvantaged communities and provide engineering expertise. Now, not only engineers, we have all kinds of different members, but provide expertise in helping them implement a project that we designed in their communities. Our goal is to improve the quality of life through environmentally equitable and economically sustainable engineering projects. We make a commitment to a community for at least 5 years in the community, and continually building on the projects that we start. For example, if we bring in water to a community, the logical next step was to bring in sanitation for that same community. And as we do it, we're trying to develop internationally responsible engineers and engineering students. And you can see there at the bottom some pretty amazing stats, and if you go online, you'll probably find quite a bit more of those same stats. Some of these pictures are on, actually all of these pictures are from a trip that I was able to go with Engineers Without Borders to the southwest Altiplano of Argentina. We were up at about 13,000 feet, and altitude was pretty intense. And we were going there to help them build a greenhouse. And one thing you learn as you go along through all these different projects is communication is key. Well, we had been communicated that we needed to go and help them build a greenhouse, and as you can see from the bottom left there is a greenhouse already in place and was actually doing fairly well. So we had to shift focus on the ground. And I just want to leave everyone with this one last slide here. Not so much the picture. This was the school that we were at in Argentina, but building the world one community at a time. And when I say one community at a time, I don't necessarily mean an international community or this or that. I mean, that community could be one person who works under you who needs some guidance and some push to go and expand their views, expand their horizons, do volunteering. And if you have any interest, there's a link there at the bottom that you can follow and join it. So thanks again, Martin.
Well, thank you, Jared, for your service and commitment there, and also your volunteer work. You've made a lot of impact both in the U.S. and outside in other countries. So great job. Great hearing from you. Now, we'll turn it over to now Katie. Katie, share with us about TransportationYOU and kind of why you got involved in mentoring.
Hi. Yes, my name is Katie Aguilar, and I'm with Bentley, and I worked with a mentoring program called TransportationYOU. And Martin, I can't advance. Let's see. No. It's not. I have the red line. Oh, here we go. There we go. All right. So what is TransportationYOU? It is a joint initiative between WTS, which is Women Transportation Symposium or Seminar, and the United States Department of Transportation. It was started in May of 2010 when a Memorandum of Understanding was signed by Secretary of Transportation Ray LaHood, which basically established the relationship between WTS and USDOT to implement and drive this program where the focus is on young women ages 13 to 18 and getting them into STEM-oriented careers in transportation through primarily mentoring, and that is the main way things are done. Some of the things is why through mentoring and why this particular group of women. If you look, I had found a paper, it was actually called Why So Few, or it was brought to my attention through WTS, that the American Association for University Women found that low self-esteem is detrimental to future effects on future achievements. So in reading this paper, girls were actually, or females were scoring the same as males on and doing the same levels of math as them in high school, but they felt they were achieving less. And since they were achieving less, they weren't going into those roles, which is pretty interesting. They also found that the self-esteem or ability to do that work does drop from middle school to high school. And again, they turn from those STEM-oriented careers and more towards not to put them down, but more of the arts and sciences careers. And so how do we stop that? And part of that is by what this program's goal is to expose them to successful women in the transportation industry through mentoring. And in this program, they actually, a lot of the females or the young women are taken into their mentor's workplace. Some of them actually have summer jobs or in the workplace, and they're exposed to, and they actually work with them. They just don't put them away and do those meaningless tasks. They actually are interacting and working with their mentees. They also work with them to do tasks. The Colorado team actually did do a design task as part of one of their initiatives. So they actually are working on creating a relationship and showing these young women what they are capable of, or what this industry does hold for them if they have an interest in science, technology, engineering, or mathematical career path. And also exposing them to women who are in a successful position already. And once you've seen it, these young women can, the idea is, and the concept really is, that they start seeing themselves in that position and are more likely to go that way. Overall, if it weren't for the mentor-mentee relationship, there would be no TransportationYOU. The two are, they're one and the same. They work together. The mentors actually help create a lot of the information or the activities for their mentees, and they let the program happen. Next slide, please. So part of TransportationYOU, and is actually written into the Memorandum of Understanding, is an annual summit. And this one was in Washington, D.C., and was held end of March, so March 28th through April 1st of this year. We brought in 17 young women ages 16 to 18, and we toured D.C., and it wasn't a sightseeing tour, although we did see a number of sites. I was part of the committee that met from August through to the week before the actual symposium, and we actually worked together to organize and bring it together. So that was my role in this youth summit and with TransportationYOU at this time. While the women were there, both the mentors and the mentees, they were exposed to many transportation hubs, from the FAA rooms for air transportation, MARTA or Metro Transportation Hub Centers. We actually went to the Research Center for Transportation, as funded by the FHWA. So we actually did get to go and hear and see a lot of transportation concepts and ideas brought up to us, as well as a lot of places made efforts to bring us to women in those areas who are successful at what they are doing, and let them discuss what they're doing and also what the organization does. So while they were there, they were also exposed. We had an activity that we ran throughout the weekend, exposing the girls to ideas of accessibility for people with physical and handicaps and disabilities. And they ran through running through and learning about them, up through making a presentation after going through and collecting sites on GIS sites or GPS sites for accessibility, and going through and working with people who have certain disabilities so that they can, and how transportation affects them. And they ended up putting all the information onto a GIS application and making a presentation for it. So it was actually a running theme throughout the weekend, and the girls actually left having learned a lot. And they did work with their mentors. All in all, they ended up learning, they were exposed to a lot, learned a lot, and thought about new ideas for careers throughout the weekend.
All right. Thank you, Katie, for sharing with us what TransportationYOU is. And we'll be coming back to you in a moment to probably ask you some of these questions. So thank you, panelists, for sharing some background here. And now it's time for the question round. So we've got, as I said, we've got some pre-populated questions that some of you had emailed in to us. And let me get it back on the question slide here. Okay. So hopefully everybody can see a few of these questions on the screen right now. And we'll go ahead with the first one at the top there. Why did you get involved? Let's see, Jared, as you were speaking, it kind of sounded like it was just natural for you to get involved with the EWB. There was natural progressions that you were making in life. What kind of tipped it off for you? What was the tipping point for you to go down that path?
Well, as I was saying, I think the Army had a bit to do with it. When I went from being an enlisted soldier to being an officer, it was instilled in me at that point that I was going into a profession, much like engineering as a profession I'm in now. And as a professional, it is your professional responsibility to volunteer and to mentor. And so I think that I just took it from there.
Okay. All right. So again, it just kind of all came before you. It just kind of fell lock in place. Neat. And by the way, as I'm asking the panelists these questions, audience, all you need to do is write into the chat window on the bottom left, type in the question that you may have specifically for either Josh, Jared, Carol, or Katie about the various programs and things that they're involved with. So please feel free to write those questions in. Josh, you had shared with us, why you were getting involved, and you mentioned a transformation that you went through, kind of a change, a shift, a paradigm shift. What got you interested in that at the very beginning before that shift happened?
Well, interestingly enough, I think that there's an element of luck to it. So for me, I was actually walking up the hill where I went to college in the freezing snow and ice, and somebody was walking next to me. I said, "Man, it really is cold." And he said, "Yeah, it's a lot colder than where I just came from." I said, "Where did you just come from?" And he said, "West Africa." And then we started to talk about that. I had no idea. I didn't even know where that was. I was, lived a relatively sheltered North New Jersey existence beforehand, and just being next to this and walking up the hill with this guy telling me about his experience in the Peace Corps in West Africa really just struck me. And so I do think there is an element of luck, like somebody tells you about this panel discussion that's happening today, and you're like, oh, I'll maybe check that out, but I don't know anything about it. I mean, there is a lot of just luck in getting involved. I do think after that, staying involved and really integrating into what volunteerism can be, listening to people talk about it, and then kind of taking that first step, maybe a toe in the water, and then maybe diving headlong, is a way to get involved. But for me, it was I just felt really lucky that I was exposed to this in a kind of a random way.
Well, that's a pretty interesting story there. Katie, what did it for you? What got you involved? Was it you were already running and kind of involved actively? Did you have a role model? What got you involved?
I've always been active in volunteering myself since high school, and it's just been a part that I've enjoyed, and it's in being active. It's a great fit in. I was involved in the TransportationYOU specifically because I met the criteria. I volunteered through Bentley, and I was female and an engineer. And Carol Reek had asked me if I could possibly, if I would be interested in doing this. And with volunteering being important and realizing what this is doing, especially for me volunteering in education, I definitely jumped at the opportunity.
Okay, so it was somebody came to you and said, hey, this is for you, you got to check this out. It was something along those lines.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Well, thanks panelists for sharing on that question. Got another one for you here. This one I'm going to throw to Jared. Jared, if you don't mind tackling this one, is mentoring just a 21st century thing? Has it been around? Is it is it current? Everybody's doing it right now. What's your take on that?
I definitely don't think it is just a 21st century thing. As Carol showed earlier, that there may be some increase over the recent years in the amount of mentoring. But I definitely believe it's gone on as long as, let's just say, father-son, mother-daughter relationships have gone on. So I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, all right, thanks. And Josh, you're really involved in kind of the very one-to-one city volunteering, not so much mentoring, but volunteer efforts. Have you seen anything change? Is it like a 21st century thing to have more volunteering, less volunteering?
Yeah, I don't think it's a 21st century thing at all. I do think that the value of it has become more openly expressed in programs like ours. I think on the university level, many colleges and universities are focusing more on volunteerism, not just as something that is a nice thing to do and charitable, but also something that really does add to the education of their students and provides a more well-rounded, more engaged, more community-focused person. Which then leads to being a better professional. So I do think that there has been a lot more attention paid to it on the college and university level, which is where the majority of our volunteers come from. The other thing about that is that it's also now been featured as something of a resume builder, something that when employers or potential employers see it, they appreciate that kind of well-rounded whole person who gives back in all sorts of different ways. So I think that certainly in a difficult economy has made volunteerism and probably mentoring on some level even more attractive to people.
Okay, and I will kind of dovetail right on with what you just said, that LinkedIn about 6 months ago, they added the feature on there to enter your volunteerism, and it's kind of tipping the hat that industries do want to see more volunteering, more mentoring experience on there, on the background of the people that are interviewing. So we've got a good question here from George, and we'll punt this over to Carol first. Do any of the panelists have an experience with utilizing their volunteer experiences on the outside world and applying them to their professional lives? So Carol, you've been a volunteer basically all your life. So how has volunteerism kind of helped you in the professional world?
Well, I think, thanks Martin, and thank you George. Good to see you again. And I think for volunteerism, it helps you in the workplace, at least for me professionally, to listen to the question that isn't being asked. Okay, so a lot of people will use words to ask things, but then there's a lot of things you need to read in between to say what's the real message getting around here. Because when you're out volunteering too, you know, you're not necessarily the director of the glue gun, if you want to say that, especially with Future City, or you know, where a lot of people say, hey, I want to get involved, but they don't know where to start. So it's listening to the unspoken word that's also important.
Okay, thanks, Carol. So, and Jared, I'm gonna add a little piece in here on this question for you. So, what experiences or benefits do we have in our professional careers, and from your Engineers Without Borders experience? But then also, kind of, what do you see that benefit in others? How do you see what you've done through Engineers Without Borders benefiting others? Because in effect, we're mentoring, we're volunteering, not for ourselves, but for somebody else. So, how has it benefited you, Jared, and how have you seen it benefit others?
Well, I think that from a selfish perspective, it's benefited me in that I've been able to make a lot of contacts in this region. Maybe that's not selfish, maybe that's just a part of the business world. But also I've been afforded the opportunity to travel. Granted, I put a lot of hard work in before those travels, but it fulfills my love for travel, and also able to mentor. What I see from others is you know, hopefully, and I think you can usually see it, is a genuine learning taking place, and a genuine you know, improvement in their overall skill set. And I think that's just a great thing, and it's great to see others moving along in that fashion.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We've got a question from Charles Griffiths out in Arizona. Have you found success in engaging retirees and being mentors for various programs? Or in this case, we'll supplement the word volunteer. Josh, have you, in Lyft there, is there a resource of retirees?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Charles. We traditionally have been volunteer-driven by our university volunteers, college student volunteers, but we've just started to broaden it to other volunteers, community members, several of whom are retirees, and it has been incredibly successful in engaging these retirees. For the biggest reason is because they come with just a wealth of experience, lifetimes of planning and budgeting and looking at resumes and all these things that our volunteers are working with our clients on. They bring to it, but with real life experiences, and it's been really fantastic. One of our retired volunteers said that every time he comes into the Lyft office and he works with a client, he said it's like fireworks going off. It's such an amazing experience for him because he never really got a chance to do this in his professional life, and now here he is fully engaged with a community that he never imagined being engaged with, and it's been very powerful for him, and for us it's been tremendously helpful to have this different perspective as well.
Okay. Carol, you've been involved in quite a few different volunteer programs. Is there good success in bringing in the retirees, as Charles asked there?
I think more so as, especially since 2008, since more people are being forced into retirement or, unplanned, lack of work for a long period of time. And so I think we're having much younger retirees at this point as part of the baby boomers. But like anything else, as Josh had said, they bring a wealth of experience, but you also want to be part of their schedule. And I would treat the retirees as if they're actually working and respect their time too. So, and check when they are available. But I wanted to go back to a question that George, if we have just 1 second here, I think George asked a good question, which I saw there, or another question would be, how do you actually recruit these volunteers to begin with? If anybody, and I'm going to put that question out through Martin as our moderator, but how do you find these mentors at this point? We're all kind of self-anointed, self-appointed for various reasons. But if there's anyone else that can share what their sources are.
And panelists.
I guess we'll send that to study committee. I'm just kidding.
All right, it looks like Quentin's writing a response there. So, and Carol, before you let go of the mic, I wanted to kind of get your vibe on this. How can, it's broad, I know, and trying to fit it in within a 1-minute response, but how can other industries, other corporations influence volunteer engagement in various programs like this?
I think by shouting it from the hilltops of what they're doing, self-promote that industry is actually going out and doing these things as part of their community outreach. Because I think when industry says it, other industry people will listen to what they're doing too. So be your own role model for other industry participants and communicate what you're doing.
And Quentin has a question here along the same lines. Do any of these organizations team with companies? And Carol, you may have you've got a high level advantage on that.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I'll just because I've been able to work with the EWB USA staff leadership there, that it is part of the Engineers Without Borders to work with their company support, those that provide financial donations, to also promote that EWB volunteering messaging throughout their company too.
Okay, so Katie and Jared, have you seen multiple organizations, multiple companies working together in volunteer engagements there?
You mean deliberately, like the organizations coming together and working together?
Correct.
Or
In TransportationYOU, was there kind of a path for corporations to work together, or was it just individual based?
There's opportunities for corporate sponsorship, of course, and then bringing people on board once they are the corporate sponsors. So corporations were welcome to come in and join, but I wouldn't say that there was
Okay.
A coming together of corporations to do good. I mean, they came together, but there were sponsorship opportunities.
Gotcha. Okay, Jared, what about Josh?
Yeah,
Josh,
sorry,
did you have something?
one of the ways that I've seen it happen is through board leadership. So, different members of different corporations will join the same organization's board, and then start to think about ways that those companies can work together, either from a volunteer day or as part of an event, or just there's a range of different ways to do it. But I think the relationships that are formed on corporate boards or on nonprofit boards really can lead to some relationship building and teamwork within companies. I've seen it on our own board, and I think that it's probably pretty common on a lot of different nonprofit boards as well.
Okay. All right. And given the time, we'll kind of start wrapping this up here and have some closing thoughts here. So this is kind of a response from the panelists to everybody that's on the session, everybody that's listening, recording, or reading about this in a transcript. For the panelists out there, let's leave on one tip, one way that each of us listening can get involved. So we'll start off with Jared. What's the walk away? Something to encourage or help others to get involved in the program that you're involved with.
Specifically in my program, just look around and see they're very well maybe already either a professional or a student organization set up. Students can always use mentors, and professionals can always use additional members.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jared. Josh, what's the walkaway?
I think the walkway for me is just whether it's getting involved with Lyft or organizations like Lyft, being involved and immersed in the community where you live and work is just of tremendous benefit, personal, professional, and I would encourage folks to just be open to that opportunity.
Okay. Thank you, Josh. Katie, what's the walkway thought here?
Walkway thought. When you're involved in your community, opportunities to volunteer are usually readily available, or the community where you spend your most time. So don't walk away from them. Mentoring is one of the easier ones to do. They keep saying just 2 to 3 hours here and there, and you can make a big influence.
Okay. All right. And thank you, Katie. Thank you very much. Carol, walkaway thought.
Just do it. Taking it from the Nike ad, make volunteering an action item on your to-do list today.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, panelists. Really appreciate you all taking the time to share about your program, your experiences with the audience. So it's been a pleasure hearing the stories, and the audience, thank you for the questions. At the bottom right hand of the screen, you will see everybody's emails, addresses. If you have specific questions for any of the panelists, myself or Carol Reed, you are welcome to email us and ask us those questions and keep the dialogue going. Feel free to catch up with us on the community, BeMentors community, bentley.com/BeMentors, out on Twitter or Facebook with the same name. So it's been a pleasure having you today, and have a great rest of your week, everyone. Good day.